Hello and welcome to my ultimate guide to the first installation of the Yorha Dark Apocalypse raid in Shadowbringers, the Copied Factory. Due to the length of this video covering the entire raid, I will be providing timestamps in the description below to each of the fights. If there's a particular fight or mechanic that you are stuck on, please feel free to skip ahead. So there will be extreme spoilers from this point forward in the video regarding this raid, including quest details, loot details, and boss details. If you do not wish to have this content spoiled, please leave this video now. As in the past, this 24-man raid consists of 3 teams of 8 players, 2 healers, 1 tank, and 5 DPS per team. To unlock this quest, please speak with the gossipy dwarf inside of the dwarven village Kamra within the Kalusia map. This will start a chain of quests starting from word about Kamra. Next up, you will need to complete the quest of Scandal in Kamra, and these will eventually unlock the Copied Factory. So before we get into the details of the raid, let's talk about the rewards very quickly. The items obtainable include 5 Orchestrand scrolls featuring soundtracks from the game Nier Automata. First off, we have Alien Manifestation, we have City of Ruins, Song of the Ancients, the soundtrack of the End, and Weight of the World. There are no limits to how many Orchestrand scrolls that you can get, and they may be sold on the market board for quite a bit of gil at this point in time. We have 2 minions, Pod 054 and Pod 316. You may only have 1 minion and they are not able to be sold. We have 1 triple triad card in the form of 9S, and then we have 1 unique raid glamour gear, the number 2 Type B material storage crate. Specifically, this is the gender neutral 2B inspired set from Nier Automata. Each week you may enter this dungeon, you may earn 2 cracked Stella cluster that you may exchange for materia, and 1 manufactured coin that you can trade in for either 1 deep shadow twine or coating, used to upgrade tombstone gear from item level 260 gear to item level 270. However, unfortunately, this does not apply to weapons as we do not have the deep shadow for the weapons. Additionally, each week you may obtain a single piece of item 260 gear from this raid, so be careful and pick what you do want. This raid consists of 6 distinct fights. 4 of these fights are main boss fights and 2 of them are trash fights. However, even the trash fights do involve some level of mechanics, and so those are going to be important to be aware of. Starting off with the first fight, we have Serial Jointed Command Module. Before you get to this fight, I need to advise you to put on knockback prevention skills onto your hotbar, as they will become relevant during this fight. For casters, this is the sure cast roll action, otherwise it is the arm's length roll ability. Starting off, this boss will spawn multiple turrets onto the sides of the room. These cannot be destroyed, and these will send in multiple purple orbs into the field periodically. They will move in a direct straight line, and try and dodge these as they will deal significant damage if they touch you. As a general rule of thumb, I find that this boss is easier to handle by standing close to the boss and watching the mechanics come out, rather than being close to the walls. There are certain mechanics later during the boss fight where if you are far away from the boss and they happen, they can result in it being very difficult to escape, and likewise probably will result in your death. Now, in terms of abilities that the boss will use, Energy Bombardment will spawn multiple orange AoE markers on the ground to dodge. Clanging Blow is the tank buster, and tanks should be popping cooldowns, and healers should be bracing for deep heals when this ability is casting. Forceful Impact will deal raid-wide AoE damage. Healers should prepare their AoE heals as this hits for a decent 40k chunk to all allies. Tanks and ranged DPS should ideally pop defensive mitigation cooldowns here for the raid wherever possible. Things like Troubadour or Heart of Light and Reprisal really do go a long way. The boss has 2 abilities that will deal area of effect damage near itself. The first of which is Centrifugal Spin, dealing massive damage and a knockback behind and in front of the boss, positioned to the sides of the boss to dodge. The second AoE is a Side Striking Spin. This will hit both sides of the boss with high damage and a knockup. To protect yourself, please move behind or in front of the boss. Otherwise, you can position yourself extremely far to either of the sides, but do be aware that this is quite a wide AoE. Next up, we have Energy Assault, and this is a very important move to keep your eye out for, and from what I've seen results in usually the most deaths in this fight. This is the real reason why I advise people to stay near the boss. The boss will rotate to face the majority of the raid and will cast out a massive cone of damage over time ability that will deal substantial damage to anyone caught in it. Rotate outside of the cone as necessary. Healers should ideally keep rescue on hand and be ready to save ranged DPS standing too far from the boss that do get caught in the cone. Systematic targeting will spawn 6 turrets on the inside of the arena. Similar to the ones before, you cannot interact with these. These will project a red line directly from themselves to one ally. These red lines do not deal damage, however they will indicate the path that the eventual damage will shoot in. The trick though is that these will target a particular player, and that player can move these red lines. So if you have the red line on yourself targeting you, it is ideal if you can try and face it away from the rest of the raid, meanwhile ensuring that you move out of the line by the time it fires. If this line is shot into the raid, it can be devastating and will deal very high damage to all players in it. Systematic airstrike will place 4 squares on the field with arrows indicating the direction that the floating turrets will move in. These floating turrets will launch circular area of effect damage around themselves and will very easily kill a player if they are hit by multiple. I advise standing inside one of the squares and following the arrows to survive. Shockwave is a knockback ability that the boss does during systematic airstrike after the first systematic airstrike. Similar to how you'd follow the arrows in the square normally, when shockwave is indicated on the ground, please pop knockback prevention in the form of surecast or arm's length. This makes it so that you can ignore the shockwave mechanic, otherwise you will be knocked into potentially multiple turrets and die. Systematic suppression will spawn rows of uninteractable turrets on the walls. These will fire high damage beams in the line in front of them, ending up covering the entire section of the arena. The key is to look at not only where they are, but also which ones landed first. The ones that landed first will fire first. So identify the ones that landed first, move to a quadrant on the field that will not be fired at, and once the first ones have fired, then move onto the quadrant that they just fired into and be safe. I should state that I say quadrant here because later in the fight there will be multiple rows of these turrets and you will need to select a safe location from both rows firing at once. The last mechanic is one that has no name that I will call circular AoEs of death. From personal experience. These are indicated by circles around the boss that will deal damage. Inner circles will explode first, and then these will lead outward with explosions. Try and time your movements so that you're moving into the circle that just exploded as it explodes. The timing is extremely tight here, and so I do find that you're going to need to move very quickly. As the fight progresses onward, these mechanics can be combined together and will come out at a more rapid pace. However, the basic principles still apply on how to handle them. Now with all of that out of the way, let's talk about our second fight. This one really doesn't have a name or one key boss that you're fighting in, so I'm just going to call it Trash Fight number 1. This fight begins by you needing to take out a pack of small stubbies, wreck them with AoE damage, and then proceed onward. After this, 4 small flyer mobs will appear in the 4 corners of the room, and 1 multi-leg medium model will exist in the middle. The small flyer mobs will shoot out purple orbs that will deal high damage just as before, and the multi-leg medium model will fire a straight line AoE named High Frequency Laser. During this time, there will be orange AoE markers on the ground, dodge them as necessary. Also, there will be a few small biped ads spawn during this. Ideally, a tank will pick them up and keep them off with the DPS. Aside from that, this should be a very smooth fight and all of the mobs should be very easy to take out. Now onward to the third fight and our second boss, Hobbes. As the alliance enters the arena of the boss, each party will be put into its own unique platform that follows its own set of rules. These rules will be consistent for your party to deal with this entire fight, so once you identify the platform you are on, you'll just need to remember that particular mechanic from then on. Platform 1 is covered in pipes and is still a relatively flat surface regardless of that. The main thing to look out for are these rectangles to identify this platform. Periodically during the mechanics, these rectangles will turn into arrows, and these arrows will indicate the direction that your character will be pushed. The pushing will happen all at once instead of gradually, so position yourself accordingly to avoid overlapping with allies during AoE phases or other mechanic phases, and to avoid being knocked into damage on the sides of the arena. Platform 2 features 4 large circular holes covered in a grating. During the fight, either of these 4 circular holes or the rest of the floor will start glowing. It will not be both at once, it will be one of those at one time. This indicates that these are dangerous areas to stand in and will deal very high damage to you, knock you up, and then apply the oil debuff to you. The oil debuff increases the fire damage dealt to you, so fire mechanics that you would normally survive will now kill you. Likewise, during these mechanics, soon after either the floor or the 4 holes explode, the other one will explode, so position yourself accordingly. Platform 3 is the creepy robot zombie head platform. This platform is similar to the last one where you need to dodge the particular areas or suffer for it. One set of the zombie heads will go off, and then the other one will go off soon after. Dodge as necessary. One last thing about platforms is that you can revive people that die on the sides of their platform from other teams, but it is very difficult to reach allies that are more inward into their platform for their party. If at all possible, die on a side of a platform if your group's healers, summoners, and red mages are down to allow another team to revive you. A trick about reviving though is that you'll be revived on the same platform as the person that cast Resurrect on you. Until all of the platforms rotate, the walls are going to then suck you out of that platform and you're going to be spat back onto your original platform. Just something to keep in mind. In addition to the platform mechanics, there are 3 other mechanics that go on in the boss room. The entire boss room will move around through the fight and reposition your entire platform to a different section of the wall. The section of the wall will employ a different mechanic against your group. For all intents and purposes, this seems to be random to me, so just look up the wall and see what's up. Before we continue into the actual mechanics, it should be stated very clearly that the boss will show a red line to indicate that they are activating the wall mechanics, and that you should be paying attention to the wall behind yourself. For the first wall mechanic, we have the glowing claw. This one will produce a ton of very strange orange AoE marker telegraphs on the ground that you should dodge. This will also spin in the direction indicated underneath the claw. There are 3 different AoE variations. One is a circle, and then there are 2 triangles. This divides the platform into 3 regions. This will move in the direction indicated underneath the claw earlier, so try and prepare in advance knowing that. The timings of the AoEs are very quick, one after another after another. Unfortunately, when trying to dodge, you should try and avoid the center of the room, as directly underneath this claw is an electrical field that will damage you. And in terms of the rotations, you can think of the platform being divided into 3 regions, and that these 3 regions will be split and rotate likewise. For the second wall mechanic, we have flamethrowers. These are either on or off and can appear in different patterns. The flamethrowers will fire a prolonged damage over time ability in front of themselves for a few seconds that will knock out any allies in the fire for a long enough period of time. How you know where to dodge is that based upon the lines of the flamethrowers are going to be linear, and then you go to whatever side or inside or outside that is not in the line of fire for the activated flamethrowers. Based on what I've seen the flamethrowers create a V formation forcing you into the center. I've seen them fill up the center of the arena forcing you to go to the sides, and then I've seen them fill up one side forcing you to go to the other side. For the third wall mechanic, we have the box drop. The claw will pick up a box and then slam it into the middle of your platform. This box has 4 walls that will then collapse and destroy anyone that is hit by a wall. To dodge, please position yourself at one of the corners of the box. Any of these sides will be smashed, and this claw can also adjust the position of the box before it falls right after it places it, and so be wary of that when you're trying to be at a corner of the box that is not falling. So that's all for the 3 walls, but remember that your platform will rotate during this fight around the arena and expose you to the various walls. Other mechanics that the boss does that impacts the entire raid include a ring laser ability. It will be a circle of AoE damage and will start from the outside of the platform and then slowly inch inward to the center of the platform. The timing of it is also pretty tight, so be ready to dodge. Next up, we have laser sight. This will place a line stacking marker onto an ally, stand within the line, and soak the damage as a team. Laser resistance test is an entire raid-wide AoE that will strike in multiple waves. Pop defensive cooldowns and heal as necessary. Next up, there's an unnamed red marker AoE ability that requires you to try and ensure that you don't overlap with your teammates. Soak the damage and healers will heal off the damage. Finally, we have an unnamed ability that spawns a bunch of little robots in the middle of your platform that will tether allies. Squishies can tank 1 single tether bot each. However, if 2 or more explode on that ally is probably going to die unless they're a tank. Ideally, the tank will take all of them and soak them with a cooldown such as Super Belied or Hollowed Ground. It should be said, however, that these mechanics can be combined together in later stages of the fight, so be prepared for that, but the general ways that you handle them are going to be the same. Next up, we have Trash Fight number 2, but this one is styled more as a boss fight, and so I'll call it Goliath Tank X Flight Unit. So first up is Goliath Tank. It will spam an ability called Energy Ring that is layers of circular AoEs that are telegraphed by these orange circles on the ground. This starts from the innermost circle and goes outward, and when I say it spams this, it really truly does spam it over and over again. The next mechanic is that there will be a bunch of little robots that come out from the side that are tethered to a few party members. These tethers cannot be exchanged with other party members, unlike the tethers seen with hobbes. These party members tethered can move the final destination of these little robots based on where they go, but be careful not to explode them all on the rest of the team. Ideally take them to the side and let them explode. Laser Turret is a linear AoE in front of the tank that deals a solid amount of damage. Dodge this. After a bunch more energy ring spams, the flight unit boss will be your next target. 360-degree bombing maneuver deals raid-wide AoE damage, healers should be braced for healing, and tanks and ranged DPS should be popping raid-wide mitigation cooldowns as necessary. Light Fast Blade will cut the entire arena in half based upon the position of this flight unit boss. Half of the arena will be safe, the other will be in AoE damage. Position as necessary to avoid this. Later on, however, the boss will move itself full sloppy style and cleaves the probably around 80% of the arena, I'm gonna say, with this attack, and so be on the lookout for that and use sprint to run towards the areas necessary. In fact, because of this, I advise to play near the middle of the arena so that you aren't put at a disadvantage mobility-wise to get to the other side of the boss. Area bombing and maneuver will target multiple players and will summon orange telegraphs on the ground that will start from the middle of the arena and head towards the outside of the arena, dealing significant damage to anyone hit. With that done, it is time to be on boss number 3. Engles, also known as the Master of the Marks. I'm still not really sure what a Marks is, but going over what is going to be in this fight, there will be a lot of marks. Oh, believe me, there's going to be a lot of marks in this fight. Before the fight, as everyone is getting to the boss, please set up 3 markers A, B, C in a triangular formation. These will be necessary for a future ad phase where the ads must be separated. Opening the fight, Engles will use Mark Smash. Mark Smash is an ability that continues to come up throughout this entire fight multiple times. The key to this ability is looking at the boss and then seeing what arm or arms that he has raised behind himself or in front of himself or to one side or another. Once you are familiar with the arm positions and what they look like, this part of the fight will become very easy. But you will likely notice many people in the raid will die to this mechanic, unfortunately, and this is just because they aren't familiar with it. And so I do advise you to put a marker on yourself to make yourself very visible to allies who can follow you. At the opening of the fight, the Mark Smash will be one of 2 variations. Either the entire left hand side of the field or the entire right hand side of the arena will suffer huge damage. This arm will decimate the entire half of the arena with tremendously large damage. Get to the same side as the arm that is not being wound up to remain alive. For completeness sake, I do want to talk about the other forms of Mark Smash here, just to keep it concise. Always keep in mind that the pattern of how the arms are raised determines what will happen. So we covered what happens when he winds up super to the far left or super to the far right. Now let's talk about what happens when he raises both of his arms into the air. For this one, there will be 2 separate arm movements, but your position should not change. When he raises his arms like this, head to the center of the arena towards the boss. This is going to be a safe zone, and do not move during his arm actions until he has fully raised his arms after performing 2 actions. He will cleave the entire back side of the platform first, and then he will cleave both sides of the arena before he's done. Next up, when he holds his 2 hands in front of himself like clappy hands or soup hands, this one you're going to want to head towards the back of the arena, and to one of the 2 far sides, very far from the center. He's going to deal damage to the entire front portion of the arena. In a clapping motion, he is then going to grind his arm forward to the back of the arena, so sit tight on the back sides until this is finished. Next up, other mechanics include Precision Guided Missile. This will target a few players and deal significant undodgeable burst of damage. Surface Missile will simply paste orange AoE markers on the ground, dodge accordingly. Incendiary Bombing will target a few players with red markers above their heads. These red markers should ideally be taken to the outside edges of the arena. After a short window of time, a large orange AoE telegraphed marker will appear underneath these players. Dodge this and please stay out of this area, as a burning fire field will last for a while afterwards after the initial burst of damage. Guided Missile will target 3 different players with this moving forward icon, and these players will be chased by an onslaught of area of effect explosions. It's very important to keep running away from these explosions and to avoid taking these through the raid, as it can very easily result in a wipe of everyone. Diffuse Laser will deal significant damage to the entire raid. Healers should heal, and ranged DPS and tanks should use defensive cooldowns where appropriate. Energy Barrage is an ability that I strongly advise everyone to keep an eye out for, as this can wipe the entire raid very easily. This ability has 2 separate actions to itself. First off, it's a linear area of effect beam that deals massive damage over time through the entire middle of the platform. This lasts for a few seconds before disappearing. The part of the energy barrage that wipes teams, however, is not this. It is the multiple puddles in front of the arena. These puddles must be stood in and have at least 1 player in them. If the puddles are missed, they will deal significant damage to the entire raid. If 4 or more puddles are not stepped in, this will absolutely crush the entire raid. So to handle this mechanic, please head to be directly in front of the boss, near the puddles, ideally standing in many puddles before the beam goes away, and then those who are able should position themselves on the puddles underneath the energy barrage beam once it goes away. A bit into the fight, we now enter the first ad phase. There will be 3 reverse jointed goliaths spawned in a triangular formation. It is critical that these be burned down before the charge meter reaches 100%. If the charge meter reaches 100%, the entire raid will be wiped. These need to be tanked separately, otherwise their defenses skyrocket. Tanks should take them to their markers placed earlier in the raid, and each party of the alliance should wreck their mob in their assigned order. Target the reverse jointed goliaths and ignore the small bipeds. In terms of how these weird small bipeds work, they honestly seem to die almost instantly after damage. I don't really know what they're meant to do, but either way, I'd say right now ignore them. Reverse jointed goliaths will also spam one ability on repeat called Arm Laser. Arm Laser will activate an orange telegraphed cone in front of themselves that will deal significant damage to all allies caught in it. After this add phase is complete and reverse jointed goliaths are defeated, all allies should be either in the middle of the platform or back of the platform depending on where the rest of the raid is stacking up. Healers should prepare for light, raid-wide AoE damage. After this move, head to the back of the arena for sure if you aren't already stacked there, but don't go too far to the edge as you can absolutely fall off of the side arena to your own death. So at this point, Engles will destroy this entire platform and the party will be thrown onto a second platform. Allies not near the edge of the arena will suffer very high damage. This platform will start with Engles using Mark's activation. This will activate 2 arms on either side of the arena that will cut entire horizontal sections of the arena with significant raid damage. Watch for the positions of the arms and dodge accordingly. In my experience, the positioning of the second Mark's activation seems random, but the first set of Mark's activation seems to follow the pattern of back third of the arena, middle third of the arena, and then frontal third of the arena. After a while, Engles will use an ability called Incendiary Saturation Bombing. This indicates a new phase of the boss fight, and I personally do call this add phase number 2. As soon as you see him cast this, run to the center front of the arena and prepare for significant bursts of damage incoming to the entire raid. During this phase, you cannot move to the back portion of the platform or to either side. At this point in time, Engles will use the ability Mark's Crush that will place both of his hands on the front sides of the arena. This will deal constant damage to the parties, and healers are advised to prepare their heals, and tanks and healers are advised to use their damage mitigation abilities as necessary. During this portion of the fight, the arms will use the Crushing Wheel ability that deals AoE damage near each hand. This will mainly concern melee jobs, and so dodge is necessary. Each cast of Crushing Arms brings the arms closer to the middle part of this small portion of the platform and will lead to a wipe if the DPS is not high enough. From this part of the fight onwards, simply follow the same mechanics that you have already seen before. Prepare for things like variations of Mark's Smash, Energy Barrage, and the like. And so that wraps up Engles, and now let's turn our attention to the fourth and final boss of this raid. The final boss of this raid is 9S. Before you start the fight, please place A, B, and C markers on the map as shown on the screen right now. This will become very important during a future add phase in this fight where the adds must be tanked separately. Neutralization is an extremely heavy-hitting tank buster. Tanks should pop mitigation. Laser Saturation deals significant raid-wide AoE damage. Tanks and ranged DPS should pop raid-wide mitigation, and healers should brace for impact. Laser Turret is a mechanic that will require the entire raid to focus on the positioning of the boss. 9S will turn around and aim a linear AoE beam through the entire raid. Dodge this by moving to the sides. The real trick here is that later during this fight, ability orange AoE markers or other mechanics may also be dropped. Dodge whatever mechanics come your way on your way to the sides. 9S also has 2 other positioning mechanics in the form of 4 hind cannons and dual flank cannons. For hind cannons, please position yourself to the sides of 9S. For dual flank cannons, please position yourself behind or in front of 9S. The first time he uses the first variation of these, he will follow up with the second quickly after, so dodge appropriately. Next up, we have an unnamed AoE cluster mess that will spawn a significant number of orange markers around the platform and mark 6 players with red markers. Dodge the orange markers as necessary, and the players with the red markers above their head should attempt to move to the outside of the arena and avoid clipping one another. Engage Mark support will spawn either 2 or 3 giant Engles hands. These will float above quadrants of the arena, and these quadrants must be avoided at all costs. Likewise, with 3 Engles hands, there will be only one single safe quadrant. The entire raid should move accordingly. Twice during this fight, 9S will use an ability called Undock. This will start a dodging mechanic heavy phase of the fight where there is nothing to attack. Please focus on identifying which side 9S is coming from. That will be indicated by his flight unit swiftly moving over the field. He also says a text line that will warn players such as "Here goes." This will bring forth a wave of damage in a line as indicated by the red telegraph flash. Where the wave of damage is indicated by the barrage of missiles and cloud of wreckage. Avoid these. One suggestion I can make here is that once the line of the barrage has passed, there won't be another barrage on that same area. So standing where a barrage has already passed is going to be safe until the next time 9S flies over the field and does his next pass. This will let you safely identify where 9S is approaching next and dodge. I also advise you to stand near the center of the arena in general for this if at all possible, because when 9S flies overhead and the missiles come out, if you're on the same part of the platform that he came out from, so following the missiles, you are very likely going to suffer tremendously large amounts of damage because the missiles could potentially land on top of yourself when they first come out. During the second phase of this undock flight mechanic, 9S will also feature an additional dodging mechanic where he will indicate certain square titles of the platform as red, and these will explode. Dodge these at the same time as you are dodging the missiles. And I do need to say that these do look extremely similar to the next mechanic that I will cover, but please don't overthink it. Just stay off of the indicated squares. I've only ever seen one set of tiles explode during these undocked phase mechanics, and so just avoid the red squares and don't overthink it. The next mechanic is anti-personnel missile. The best way to think of this mechanic is as a spatial short-term memory test. There will be a pattern of red tiles indicated. These will eventually explode. The real trick though is that multiple patterns of red tiles to explode in the future will be indicated in quick succession before any actually explode, and the explosions happen extremely rapidly one after another. The first time you see this mechanic will be 2 red tile patterns. Memorize the first to explode and then immediately move to a non-red tile during this first pattern. Then note the second pattern to move from the safe tile in the first pattern to the safe tile in the second pattern. The next times that this mechanic will be seen will involve 3 red tile patterns. This will require a bit more planning, as sometimes previously safe tiles are surrounded on all sides by dangerous tiles. Identify the set of safe tiles for the first, second, and third patterns, and move accordingly when they begin to explode. As with the other previous bosses, as the fight progresses, expect to see many of these same mechanics as you just saw stack with one another. Handle them as described. Now it's time to talk about phase changes for 9S. We have 2 major phase changes that have mechanics to be handled in different ways. First off, we have Goliath tank support phase. This is indicated to start by 9S using the engage Goliath tank support ability. This will spawn 2 Goliath tanks in the northeast and southwest corners of the room while making 9S invulnerable. There's no need to focus down one over the other or anything like that, in my experience at least, as long as they all die before 9S can spam enough AoE damage through the party. Dodge orange AoE circles on the ground as you would normally, and healers should expect light raid-wide AoE damage spam from 9S during this phase and be braced to heal this off. This is 9S spamming laser saturation behind his barrier. Very important is that you're gonna have 2 players, one marked from each tank with a red marker, and this is actually going to indicate where the tank is going to be firing their beams. And so these players should ideally aim these beams away from the entire raid and off of the platform. And so make sure that you do that and make sure that the tanks ideally are taking the damage. However, the main thing that is going to cause deaths during this phase is going to be when you have defeated both of the Goliath tanks. 9S is going to use the hack Goliath tank ability, and from there will be a line from 9S indicating which tank he's hacking. You need to immediately move behind the other tank that he's not hacking, and then be braced to move again very quickly after the first has exploded. The first will explode, dealing damage to the entire platform, and so the only way to dodge it is being fully behind this first tank. I advise, if you're a ranged DPS, trying to be near the middle of the arena during this phase so that you can run behind the tank that he isn't targeting with the hack as fast as possible. I suggest healers hold onto rescue and use it to save any stragglers. Now once the first hack tank has exploded, please run away from the tank that you were just behind, as it will do its own small explosion. This is a significantly smaller AoE than the first though, allowing you to dodge it effectively. And so if you survived so far, then you're back to normal 9S mode using the mechanics previously described. So now let's talk about the second ad phase. During the later portion of the fight, 9S will walk into the back of the platform and be surrounded by a ton of golden hacking stuff, and he will become in an untargetable state. He will say something like, just try dodging this, while the platform becomes dark. 3 serial jointed service modules will be spawned, and these serial jointed service models must be tanked separately or they become extremely tanky. Tanks should pull their serial jointed service model to their own group's marker placed before the start of the fight and ensure that they are kept split apart. All members of each group should also go to their group's assigned position, as there will be a stacking mechanic that will wipe the group if not enough stack, so please make sure that you are with your group. During this portion of the fight, there will be a hacking meter that once full will wipe the entire raid, and so this should be treated as a DPS check. These serial jointed service models, however, do have some of their mechanics retained from the first boss. Clanging Blow is a painful tank buster that will deal a significant amount of damage to the tank. Side striking spin will hit both sides of the serial jointed service model, stand in front or behind it, and centrifugal spin will hit in front and behind the serial jointed model. So stand off to one of the 2 sides. Handle the stacking mechanic by having all members of your group stack underneath the marker for your group. Once all 3 of these are defeated, your ally 2P will summon a giant golden shield. Stack underneath the shield with the rest of the raid. Ranged DPS and tanks are advised to pop raid-wide mitigation, and healers are advised to brace for massive amounts of damage incoming. After this, 9S will return to all of the mechanics described earlier, and from there on, the rest of the fight is basically just combining these together in different ways until he's finally defeated. And with all that said and done, congratulations on being fully prepared to tackle the Copied Factory. So what are your thoughts on the Copied Factory? Do you like the fight? Have you played Nier Automata? But let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and if this guide helped you or entertained you, please leave a like or subscribe, and those really go a super long way and are incredibly appreciated. Anyhow, that's all for this video. Also, if you play a Hrothgar and that you do get the number 2 Type B material storage crate, send pics.